238 by Humongous. Quote, "You're going to pledge blind allegiance and call yourself American for a government that fucks you on a regular basis?" Unquote. Doug Stanhope. What if you suddenly contracted Gulf War syndrome? How could I, you ask? I'm not in the military and have never been to Afghanistan nor Iraq. How about if you found yourself in the hospital in need of a blood transfusion? What if that transfusion came from a soldier who has Gulf War syndrome? Obviously, the answers here are, well, then you'd suddenly have Gulf War syndrome as well, and would have no recourse but to suffer with it. Where did Gulf War syndrome come from, and what is it, you inquire? Gulf War syndrome is an amalgamation of diseases knowingly caused by the United States government. You can attempt to debate this, but when the U.S. uses depleted uranium, DU, lethal vaccines, and biological as well as chemical weapons on its own soldiers, the polemic ends. There's such a mountain range of evidence, first-hand testimony, official documentation, photographic and video, damning the government. To deny such would be lunacy. Depleted uranium? What's that? Depleted uranium is one of the most deadly substances known to humans. Depending upon exposure levels, it can kill within days or over a period of years. Depleted uranium, comprised of uranium-238, uranium-235, and uranium-234, will be around longer than Earth has been in existence. This planet we call home has been tactile roughly 4.5 billion years. Uranium-238 has a half-life of 4.5 billion years. Hence, if you had a pound of U-238 today, in 4.5 billion years, you'd still have half a pound of it. Depleted uranium causes a host of horrific diseases, including an array of cancers, as well as the most severe birth defects. We're talking babies born with no heads, infants birthed without limbs nor eyes, some with single eyes in the middle of their forehead, living cyclopes, newborns delivered with organs outside their bodies, covered in immense tumors, and some that are simply formless fusions of putrefied blood and flesh, unrecognizable as Homo sapiens. And these genetic birth defects aren't confined to the Middle East. Chock full of depleted uranium, U.S. soldiers are coming home and fucking their wives, who are giving birth to severely deformed children. All this was brought to you by what you refer to as, quote-unquote, your government. So the next time you see a military enlistment propaganda commercial, destroy your television and never look at another one. When you watch some ignorant imbecile preparing to join the armed forces, show him or her the movies Beyond Treason or Gulf War Syndrome, Killing Our Own. Break out YouTube testimonies of Gulf War veterans the likes of Dennis Kine or Dr. Doug Rocky. Why would the U.S. government perpetuate such atrocity on its own soldiers? If you haven't been watching my audio chapters, government not only doesn't care about you, it hates you. I don't know how much more emphatically this has to be proven before you acknowledge such. In this case, quote-unquote, you denotes the entire populace, which includes, quote, its soldiers, unquote. Government steals from you and disguises this thievery as quote-unquote taxes. It threatens you and euphemizes this malevolence as quote-unquote laws. It enslaves you and informs you it's for your own benefit. It slaughters you via GMO proliferation, implementation of a monetary system, nuclear testing, etc. Why the fuck would it stop short by not annihilating, quote, its own troops, unquote, as well as its citizens via biological and chemical warfare and depleted uranium. It's brainwashed you to believe electric cars aren't feasible. Thus, we're forced to use deleterious internal combustion engines, which have caused countless deaths from cancer. This, in the face of the fact electric vehicles were produced before gas-powered and winning races against fossil fuel-burning cars over a century ago. Suddenly, electric-powered semi-trucks are quote-unquote magically possible, but for over 100 years we just couldn't figure out how to create viable clean-engine vehicles. Government has drowned you in radioactive fallout from Fukushima, doing nothing to mitigate this problem, even though it has the means with which to rectify it, at least for 100 years. Government has sold you a bill of goods on nuclear power, an energy source that uses the most lethal products known to humans and produces equally virulent waste for which we've no method of disposal. How many times do you have to be shot, at point-blank range no less, before you realize somebody's trying to kill you? You can conjure up as many fake excuses and thus continue to lie to yourself that government is somehow here for your benefit. In the meantime, however, bureaucracy will destroy us all. It won't stop until each and every one of us, including those within government, is dead. The president would never do something like that to us. I'm proud to be an American. I fought for your freedom, and I resent your accusations. Okay, if that's your opinion. I love that last one. Since it's only, quote, my opinion, unquote, government has nuked the fuck out of the populace. We all have proof of each and every atomic quote-unquote test government has conducted on us. In addition, we've ironclad evidence government destroyed the electric vehicle as a feasible method of transportation. We also possess countless examples of how government profits off our suffering from cancer. Just look around you at how much money bureaucracy would stand to lose if they announced a cure for this disease. Making and keeping people sick is huge business. On top of this, we've innumerable cases as well as a paper trail as blatantly definitive as the 405 freeway, proving government has nuked us with depleted uranium. To those who understand yet fail to acknowledge what's being done to us, your deranged excuses sound like the ramblings of lunatics. Because they are. If they're doing it to everybody, it means they're doing it to themselves as well. Why would they do that? One need look no further than the proverb of the scorpion and the turtle. A scorpion was sunning itself by the edge of a lake. As the day progressed and the sun descended behind the trees, he grew cold in the shade. Gazing across the pond, he longed to be on the other side where the sunlight had yet to be extinguished by the foliage, and the warmth of the day remained. Unfortunately for the scorpion, he was unable to swim. Scrambling to the edge of the water, the arachnid spied a turtle preparing to enter the lake. "Excuse me," the scorpion approached. "Would you be so kind as to give me a ride on your back across the pond?" "Are you fucking nuts?" the turtle replied. "Look at the size of that hook on your tail. You'll sting me halfway across and kill me. Beat it, douchebag. I've got swimming to do." With that, the turtle immersed his toe in the water and prepared to float away. "I don't mean to sound contentious, but if I sting you while I'm on your back, we'll both drown, won't we?" The turtle, stoned like a woman in the Old Testament having sex out of wedlock, thought about the scorpion's rationale for a moment. "Fuck! You're right, man. What logic would there be in killing yourself?" "Exactly," responded the scorpion. "Shit! Hop on, amigo. The turtle offered up his shell. "Let's do this before I lose my buzz." Smiling, the scorpion climbed atop the turtle's back, and they headed into the lake. Halfway across, the scorpion stung the turtle. "What the fuck, asshole?" Immediately, the poison took hold, and the turtle began sinking. "Why the hell'd you do that? That's not even logical." Submerging as well, the scorpion replied, "It has nothing to do with logic. It's in my nature." "I don't want to hear, 'Congress didn't know.' They kept the information from the Senate." "The president wasn't briefed." Congress, the Senate, and the president are government. Since government is guilty, that means, quote, all government, unquote. You want to sign up with the enemy, i.e. bureaucracy, so you can have your multi-million-dollar mansion and your 6 BMWs? Well, when we catch the government's balls in a vice, that means those are your testicles we're squeezing. Quote, "The use of uranium emissions and the destruction of Iraq's nation, Iraqi's infrastructure, has turned Iraq into a radiological and chemically toxic nightmare, a sewer, a garbage dump for eternity," unquote. Former director of the U.S. Army Depleted Uranium Project, Major Doug Rockey, Ph.D. Remember when George Bush told quote-unquote Iraqi citizens, quote, "The tyrant will soon be gone. The day of your liberation is near," unquote. Again, how do you quote-unquote liberate a populace? By nuking the shit out of them? Iraq is now so irradiated, it might as well be Pripyat near Chernobyl. Quote, "How could you use hundreds of tons of depleted uranium over Iraq, knowing that its half-life is 4.5 billion years? It'll blow in the sands of the desert forever. It'll be in the air that the Iraqi people breathe. It'll be in the vegetables they eat, and it cannot be filtered out of the water supply." So the further irony is that in the process of quote-unquote liberating Iraq, we have devastated its environment for eternity. Unquote. Major Doug Rockey. These bastards we've allowed to be in charge are lunatics, hell-bent on quote-unquote owning everything and decimating us in the process. Is it going to take cancer to destroy your body before you do something? Are you going to have to birth a kid with one eye before you stand up to the enemy, known as government, and eradicate it? Quote, "Just imagine if any American city had 12,000 homes destroyed, causing the people in them to suffer and die. Hospitals were bombed, utility companies destroyed, and there was no effort whatsoever to help the suffering civilians." Unquote. Major Doug Rockey. It's estimated 125 to 200 Iraqi children are dying every day due to the United States quote-unquote liberation plan. These kids can't find water nor food which hasn't been contaminated. They're perishing from cancers and other diseases caused by the U.S. releasing biological and chemical weaponry and depleted uranium on them. Quote, "The estimates as far as the Iraqi casualties among the children and amongst the civilian population of Iraq since the Gulf War I is on the estimate of 2.5 million. Unquote. Major Doug Rockey. How is this depleted uranium dispersed? U.S. and coalition soldiers are given bullets and bombs with this stuff inside them and told to fire at will. Depleted uranium rounds come in 20, 25, 30, 50, and 120 millimeter shells, quote, bunker buster, unquote, bombs, and cruise missiles. Once these projectiles hit a target, they explode, releasing their lethal cargo into the environment. Quote, the incidence of childhood cancer in Basra, a city in Iraq with nearly 3 million people, now has gone up 700%, or 7 times. We've never seen this in medicine before, unquote. Pediatrician and president of the Nuclear Policy Institute, Helen Caldicott, MD. Much of the Middle East is arid desert. Sand in this region is carried vast distances via dust storms. Hence, depleted uranium deposits in Afghanistan and Iraq end up elsewhere. There's strong indication based on uranium spikes thousands of miles away that coincide with the dissemination of this lethal material it already has. Quote, people all over the world are going to inhale this dust in various concentrations, depending upon the weather patterns and the weather flows. So there will be a big spike of uranium genetic damage in the world genome population, not just in the people, but in the animals, in the earthworms, in the birds, in the rats, in the deer, in every single living system that lives in zones where this uranium will have gone to. And this will lead to increases in infertility, to increases in birth defects, to increases in cancer, increases in a whole range of illnesses. It's a very, very serious problem, unquote. Scientific Secretary of the European Committee on Radiation Risk, Dr. Christopher Busby. So the next time you're voting, and thereby giving the enemy life, realize by doing so, you're perpetuating this genocide. A genocide not only of those in Afghanistan and Iraq, but of you and your immediate family as well.